Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening, both in person at the Princeton Public Library and online here in our virtual library Zoom. My name is Nora Walsh, and I'm so pleased to welcome you to this evening's event, Conquering LinkedIn with Jeremy Schifeling. Before we formally start, I would like to thank Ilana Gold at Workman Publishing for helping us arrange the details for tonight, as well as David Schuckman and the rest of the team at PSG of Mercer County for co-presenting with us. PSG and the library offer weekly sessions for job seekers on Friday mornings, and I will add a link to their event calendar in the chat. Please note that this event is being recorded and it will go up on the library's YouTube channel within a few days. So if you have friends or colleagues who you think would be interested in this presentation but couldn't make it, please feel free to share once that goes up. During the presentation, we do invite and encourage you to put in your questions in the chat box or the Q&A function, as we have both reserved time at the end for questions, and Jeremy is also going to be taking questions as we go. So please do add those. If you are in the library building, Janie will be collecting questions from you and will send those to me so that we can have them up on screen. So now let me introduce our speaker for this evening. Jeremy Schifeling has devoted his career to helping students succeed in theirs. From recruiting top students at Teach for America to leading student marketing for LinkedIn, he's touched the lives of millions of people just starting their journeys. Along the way, he's published a top-selling book on job applications, served as the University of Michigan's tech career coach, and produced the most viewed video on LinkedIn's history. Nicely done. He currently leads teacher outreach efforts at Khan Academy and shares his thoughts on Break into Tech, a site for anyone who wants to launch a tech career. Along with Omar Garriott, he ran LinkedIn's education team before they formed the Job Insiders to advise all levels of job seekers. Now they have shared all they know in their book, LinkedIn, Conquer LinkedIn, Land Your Dream Job, Own Your Future. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're so glad you're with us.
Thank you so much, Nora, and thank you also to Janie, who've made this session possible. If you don't know these amazing folks, please do give them some digital love through the Zoom chat or in person if you happen to be in the room. They've worked really tirelessly to bring you great programming all throughout the pandemic. And even as we move into this new hybrid phase, they're still working hard at it. So please do send them a lot of love for bringing you these great sessions. And I also want to thank you all for joining tonight. You know, I know there's lots going on in the world for better or worse right now, but I want to make sure that the next hour is incredibly worth your time. So as I was telling Nora, we're going to make this session really interactive. This is not your typical book chat, not your typical webinar where you kind of sit back, turn your brain off, but instead all about getting hands-on with LinkedIn in a way that's really going to transform your career. So again, if you haven't done so already, please put your favorite emoji of joy or love to thank Janie and Nora in the chat. And then a little bit about your speaker this evening. So first of all, I've got to confess, I have had a super lucky career. I started my career as a kindergarten teacher in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and then ultimately got a chance to work at all these great places. But the one place that really transformed my career was getting to work inside LinkedIn. And that's because as a totally naive job seeker who would fill out applications online and then never hear back, I had no clue what was going on the other side of the process. But working at LinkedIn was kind of like shining a flashlight into the black box of the hiring process. How does it work? How can I make it work for me? And so I've been on a mission for the last decade to share those secrets with students and alumni around the world, helping them land the jobs of their dreams. And what I want to start with are the 3 core principles that undergird everything we need to know about LinkedIn. And the first one is especially pertinent here in 2022, with the world so topsy-turvy, with the economy up and down on almost a daily basis. You can say as a job seeker, you know, what chance do I have to control my own destiny amidst all this chaos? What I'm going to recommend that you do is you change your view, change your lens. Go from that bird's eye view down to the hiring process at any company or any organization in the world. Because once you get down to the level of an individual hire, whether it's at Princeton University or Google or Goldman Sachs, that process is really easy to understand. And once you do understand it, you can start to break it down and reverse engineer it. And the best place to do that reverse engineering, that job hacking, if you will, is none other than LinkedIn. And that's for three very simple mathematical reasons. Number one, here in 2022, LinkedIn has all the companies, it's got all the recruiters, and it's got all the jobs. So in other words, LinkedIn is where the action is. That's where you want to be. But you don't want to use LinkedIn the same way that other people do, which is as yet another social media site, another Facebook, another Twitter, another Instagram, a place that's great for wasting time, but not for achieving success. Instead, I want you to use LinkedIn the same way that recruiters do, which is to be really focused on a clear goal, unlocking opportunity, and push all the other noise, all the other stuff to the side. Because if you can do that step by step through a really systematic process, you too can land an awesome opportunity on LinkedIn. And so to make the most of today's session, as I was mentioning, this is not the place to say, hey, I'm just going to kind of multitask a little bit or think about something else. Instead, I want you to really lean in. And I'm going to ask you to do that in three specific ways. Number one, as a former teacher, old habits die hard. So I'm going to be throwing pop quizzes at you throughout the session. Please answer those in the chat or in the room if that's where you happen to be. Number two, if you want to go beyond just answering questions and actually get your hands dirty using LinkedIn, I'm going to give you a chance to go one-on-one with me to demonstrate how all this works. And all I've got to do is be the first person to raise your hand on LinkedIn, and you're going to be good to go. And then third and finally, just like we were talking about, if you've got any questions whatsoever, yes, you can certainly save them till the end, but you can also ask them in real time, and I'm happy to address those as they come up. So feel free to ask those in the chat or the Q&A. Okay, all that being said, let's dive in with the first big question. This is an important one because this is where all the magic happens. Imagine now that you're a recruiter at your dream company. Again, it could be a nonprofit, a government agency, it could be a big company, it could be a startup. But the one thing that every recruiter begins their search for on LinkedIn with is one of the following. They either search by degree. I need a BA or an MBA. Or maybe they search by school. I need someone who went to Princeton or to the University of Pennsylvania. Or maybe they search by function. I need someone who can be an accountant or an iBanker or a consultant. Of these three options, A, B, or C, what do you think is the first thing that every recruiter searches for on LinkedIn when they look for top talent? So give me a guess if you're online, write in the chat, A, B, or C. And let's do this, Janie, for the room. If you believe the answer is A, go ahead and raise your hand right now. And Janie, you can do a quick scan there just to see. Okay, so that's A. Hands down, please. If you think the answer is B in the room, go ahead and raise your hand. It's B. And then finally, if you think the answer is C, function, go ahead and raise your hand. Great. Janie, what's the sentiment of the room? What did you notice? And Janie, you're muted right now. So if you could unmute for 1 sec, just let me know. Oh, Janie says C. Okay, awesome. So people in the room are saying C. At the same time online, Jamie says C, Brian says C, Deb says C, Gary says C, Christina says C, Lucia says C. I like that Clifford said Z. Maybe it's one of those trick questions. But indeed, everyone is saying C and everyone is correct. And to prove it to you, let me take you to the single most important screen in the whole hiring process that no job seeker actually knows about. Because yes, this is LinkedIn, but this is not the free version of LinkedIn that you and I use all the time. Instead, this is a special version just for recruiters that costs $10,000 per year. And even at that expensive price point, every recruiter in the world still uses it because it has all this power, all the world's talent, all in one place, all at a recruiter's fingertips. And look what they do with all that power. Instead of coming in here and filtering for school or degree or anything else, the number one thing they want to figure out is, can you actually do the job I need to fill? Can you be a project manager, a product manager, a producer? Can you be awesome for this specific role? And the problem is that so many times I see people come onto LinkedIn, whether they're students, recent grads, career changers, and their headline on LinkedIn only talks about what they've done in the past or the thing that they're doing right now. But it's not specific about what they want to do in the future, where they're headed. And the problem with that approach is that if you just talk about what you've done in the past and you want to move away from that, you're going to be typecast forever because recruiters have to know where you're headed since that's how they do their searches. And so I want to start with our very first demo today with probably the single most important step in the entire job search process, which is finding your perfect path, finding the role that will really ignite your career. And so if you are on the fence about the right path for you, or you're thinking about changing into a new field, I want you to do one of two things. If you're on Zoom, just chat in and say, hey, Jeremy, I'm in. I want to volunteer. Or if you're in the room, go ahead and raise your hand. And Janie, let me know if you see any volunteers in the room. You can just chat in and let me know. For now, I see Lynn would like to actually participate online. So why don't we go with Lynn first? And then Janie, we'll come back to you in the room for the next one. Okay, so Lynn, thank you so much for being the first to raise your hand. I've gone ahead and given you the chance to unmute your line. So go ahead and do that. And then just let me know when you're online. Hey, Lynn. Hey, Lynn, can you just speak up a little bit? Okay, I think Lynn might be having a little problem with their line. Let's go to Alice, our second volunteer. Alice, I've just unmuted your line. Let me know if you're on.
I'm on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great. How are you, Alice?
I'm good. I got to see you when you presented at Brandeis University a couple of years ago on a webinar. It was great.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And you mentioned in the chat, Alice, are you also a professor in the business school?
I am a professor in the business school, and I'm also a career coach. I've had a career coaching business for over 20 years, and I've coached thousands of people, and I think your advice is spot on.
Oh, I love that. Oh, thank you so much for joining, Alice.
Sure.
And thank you, especially for volunteering. So I know this might be a little bit fanciful because I think you've already found your own passion, but let's just walk through this as if you were considering a career change.
Okay.
So first of all, tell me this, Alice, if you could go into any other path besides the path you've already gone down, what would it be?
At this point in my life, what would it be?
Yeah, or even something that you considered earlier on in your career, and you always wonder, I wonder what it would have been like to have gone down that road.
That's a tough question for me to answer because I feel like through serendipity and just happenstance, I've ended up doing exactly what I love to do. I worked in tech, I worked in sales and marketing, and ultimately moved over to HR. I'm trying to think what else I would have liked to do. Maybe work in a nonprofit that would make a large difference in the quality of many people's lives simultaneously.
I love that. Oh, so good. And I can tell you, as someone who works at a nonprofit today, there are a lot of psychic benefits to that. Maybe the compensation isn't always amazing, but having a chance to make that impact does feel great. So let's imagine that you want to sort of consider that road.
Mhm.
And basically, I offer you the option. I say, Alice, you could read 1,000 blog posts about it, try to get a sense of what the field is like, or you could talk to people who are non-profiteers today, doing that dream job on the inside. Which would you prefer and why?
I would prefer to talk to people because I found when I was trying to choose my path within tech environments, how I decided to go over to the people side of the business away from sales and marketing was talking to people who were in that arena. And what I found was similar to what you just said, Jeremy, people who were in the HR side working closely with employees didn't always make the most money, but they had huge job satisfaction in the right environment. So I think talking to people about with very specific questions, what do you like? What don't you like? What would you do differently? Gave me really good career advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got to tell you, I'm sort of living proof of the opposite reality, which is whenever I've gone down a career path, just because it seemed really glamorous, or everyone was talking about it in my friend group, but I didn't actually talk to people on the inside, I've lived to regret it because oftentimes I'm disappointed and surprised negatively when I actually get there. So much smarter to figure out what it's really like before you take the plunge.
Right. So perception is not reality.
Exactly. That's right. Because again, there's, especially in the MBA world, you and I know this, students will say, I really want to be a consultant or a product manager or a banker. But then they get into that world and they're working 80 or 100 hours a week. And it's not exactly the life they wanted.
Exactly.
that being said, let's find some people that we can learn about this career path from. Did you actually go to Brandeis yourself, Alice, or did you go to another alma mater?
I did not. I graduated from Vassar College with a degree in English literature.
I love it. Okay, so Vassar is perfect because you're going to have this network of small liberal arts grads who are going to be so passionate and so happy to share their experience with you. So what I'm going to recommend that everyone does, and hopefully you have your own laptops pulled up or your own smartphones pulled up. And like how Princeton said, hooray for literature majors. Absolutely. I have a feeling there are a couple on the library staff. Is if you come to the Vassar College page on LinkedIn, or the Princeton page, or the NJIT page, or whatever page you're looking at for your respective alma mater, you're going to be able to find hidden deep within the belly of LinkedIn this product that I used to work on when I was there, which is called the Alumni Tool. So this little tab called Alumni. And the powerful thing about this tiny little tab is it gives you access to tens of thousands of alums who've gone on to do all this fascinating stuff. Work at Google, NYU, Amazon, Microsoft, Harvard, Kaiser. And we can learn from their experience to see if it would be a good fit for us. So why don't we start here, Alice? Why don't we say, of all these amazing Vassarites, how many are actually in the nonprofit sector? And unsurprisingly, a pretty big chunk, huh?
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm sure the alumni office or the development office at Vassar is pulling their hair out, wishing more people would go to Google. But that's great for you. These are great people to learn from, right?
Right.
And so you can see they're at all these cool nonprofits: Environmental Defense Fund, Nature Conservancy, Way to Win. And so you can say, for any of these organizations, do any of them strike your fancy, Alice? Have you ever considered maybe working for environmental causes or education causes?
Yeah, I think at this point in my life, with what's going on in the world with climate change, that would be a huge interest of mine to see if I could make a difference in environmental issues in the sort of last phase of my career.
I love that. Yeah. What a better legacy than to help the planet for the next generation. So you come over to EDF, you come to the Nature Conservancy, and look what we've done. In a couple of clicks, we went from 800 million professionals on LinkedIn to the 27,000 who went to Vassar, to the 1,700 who work in nonprofits, to the 6 who are working at these specific organizations. And so now we can scroll on over here and you can see when they graduated, even what they studied. And you might say, aha, here's someone who's a director at the Nature Conservancy, Marisha. Could be a really fascinating person to learn from. If you want to reach out to her, Alice, and get Marisha to sort of hop on the phone with you for a quick chat, how would you go about doing that on LinkedIn?
So the way I would go about doing that, I always like to start with a compliment. Yeah. So I would reach out with a connection request. I have LinkedIn Premium, so I would include a message. I would do a little bit of research about her and see what she's done recently in her role as a director. And I try to offer a compliment or say I respect what she did, or something very specific that she would respond to in a positive way. And then I would see what her response is. To me, it's kind of like, Jeremy, if you walk down the street, you wave at someone and they wave back, the door's been opened to start a conversation. So first I'd see if I get a response, but I'd have a strong intention, but a gentle approach.
I love that. And again, are you going in there saying, Marisha, I'm a Vassar alum just like you, give me a job at the Nature Conservancy? Is that your approach?
Absolutely not. I think that's the very strong approach before they've waved back. I think that she would be able to see that I'm Vassar alum. I might mention it, or I might mention my major, because as you said, Vassar's a small school and the alumni network is very, connected. But I would never go in and ask someone for something before they get a chance to know who I am.
Yeah. And so I love everything you shared there, Alice. I can see why you're such a good career coach, because you're reaching out in so much more of a humanistic way versus a transactional one. You're not just saying, give me something because we happen to be part of the same network. You're saying, I really relate to you on a human level. I'm impressed by what you've done.
Right.
And you're gonna say, I know you must be incredibly busy, but any chance we could chat for even 10 minutes on Zoom? And you're sort of like giving this very low threshold, right? You're not asking for an hour of her time tomorrow. You're just saying, when you have a few minutes free, could we connect? Because I'd love to learn from your experience. And I think every alum, every alumna wants to pay that forward. So I love that approach, Alice. And by the way, I'm going to put this into the chat because I think everyone can benefit from that kind of template. So now here's the big question. You've got Marisha on the phone, or you've got her on Zoom. You have a chance to ask her about her career and her experience. What are you going to ask her, Alice, to figure out if her path is the right one for you?
So I think the template I described before, which is listening to her story. How did you get into this kind of work? What were the decisions you made? What was your motivation? And, chances are she didn't start off with this career goal as a Vassar undergrad, because Vassar is such a liberal arts college. But maybe like me, as she grew in her professional experience, she wanted to give back. She wanted to contribute, because most people in nonprofits are not going after the high salaries that you would get on Wall Street, but they're going for a different purpose. So I would ask her what her thought process was, how she arrived at the place she is now. And then I would ask her, what she likes, what she doesn't like, and what she would do differently. So have her reflect back, and I would just listen.
Yeah. And then how do you connect what she's sharing in terms of what she loves about her job, what she hates about her job, to your unique gifts and superpowers? How do you make that kind of connection?
So, Jeremy, I get asked this question all the time, and I think of it, the example I always use, it's like going shopping.
Yes.
And you see something, pretend you're in the mall and you see, a piece of clothing in a window, and you really are drawn to it, but you don't know why. And it's not really that important to know why. It's just important to know that something about that is drawing you in, either the color or the style or the fabric. And then when you examine it more closely, you go up to it, you try it on, you say, is this a fit or is this not comfortable? So what I would do with this connection is I try to understand a little bit more if it draws me in, if what she's saying, hits my heart, hits my desires, something that I want to do, or is what she's saying, nah, I wouldn't like that. That just doesn't feel good to me. So I'm very intuitive about it.
Yeah, I think that's so important. It's like, there really is this fine balance that you're trying to achieve, which is you're getting all this external information from the folks who are on the inside, but you're also comparing it intuitively, like you said, to what you know about yourself and being introspective about what makes you happy. Right. And if you can build that bridge from what you love doing, what you're great at, to an opportunity out there in the world, then you're going to be so much stronger at every step in your career. And Alice, I gotta say, I feel so lucky that you joined the call today, because you just demonstrated the perfect process for getting started. I love that.
Thank you.
And if anyone has questions, I'd be happy to chat to it. I think Alice would probably be happy to speak to it. But again, this is such a critical step, and we often skip over it as job seekers. We immediately start applying for jobs. We ultimately even get the job, but we find ourselves looking for jobs again a few years later because we chose the wrong path for ourselves. So invest time in doing your homework, find that right path, and then dive in. Thank you so much, Alice.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. So if you've got any questions, obviously feel free to raise your hand, feel free to ask in the chat. Janie, are there any questions in the room right now that people want to call out?
Let me see. Do we have any questions here in the room? I'm on mute, under mute. Oh, yes. Alex has. Alex, why don't you come on up here and ask it yourself? We have a little microphone here at the top front. Okay. Here, I can even start the video. You can see Alex, I think.
Okay, my question is, how many of these letters, how many intros do you have to send out to be effective? If you send out one, that's okay. You wait 2 days, a week, perhaps you get a response. But to be effective, I feel you need to send out many. What's your opinion?
So how many of these connections? Is that what you're saying, per day, kind of, or week?
Yeah, how many do you need to send out to make it effective?
How many to be effective?
Yeah, such a great question, Alex, because you're right. This is just one isolated example, but really to do this effectively, you would want to launch a whole campaign around this, where you're not putting all your eggs in a single basket and hoping and praying that Marisha responds to you. Instead, you also want to reach out to everyone at the EDF, maybe a couple other nonprofits as well. Not only will that increase your odds that you hear back from more people, but it'll give you more data points for your portfolio. You never want to launch an entire new career just based on one person's opinion. So if you could hear from 5 people or 10 people, all the better for making a richer, more informed decision. Great question, Alex. I love that. Any other questions, Jamie?
No, not, oh, one more, yeah. Okay, hang on, we have someone coming up to the podium. We're on a podium up here. Great. And this is Alan Kirshner, who works with our PSG Job Seekers Group. Alan?
Hey,
Jeremy.
Alan.
My question is, for people that are starting out with LinkedIn, is the basic one acceptable, or what's your feeling about going to the premium?
Yeah, such a good question. So, kind of came up implicitly on what we were just doing, because when I went to Marisha's profile, the first thing LinkedIn said is, hey, send her a message. And to be honest, this is kind of a trap, because as you'll notice, LinkedIn says you've got to have premium just to send her a message. And for those who don't know, LinkedIn Premium is a subscription that's anywhere from $50 to $100 a month just to send a couple of emails to potential contacts. And so while it might seem worthwhile because these conversations are so important, I'll remind you that there are 2 better ways. Number 1 is do exactly what we did here in this example, which is skip the message button, go to connect, and then actually add a personalized note, which you can do for free. Or better yet, check this out. The reality is, having worked at LinkedIn, I know that the vast majority of people in the world just are not that engaged on LinkedIn, and that's okay. Maybe they never see your message because they forgot their password or they're locked out of their account. But if you want to get in touch with Marisha and be guaranteed of a response, or at least her seeing your message, come over to another site called hunter.io, also free to use. And basically, you're going to plug in the Nature Conservancy. And you're going to say, show me the email address format for this organization. And so let's figure out what their email domain is. So it's nature.org. What a great domain to have. And then once you plug that in, they'll identify, aha, the most common email format is first name at nature.org. And therefore, if you write to Marisha at nature.org, we have a good chance, not just of having our message lost in the LinkedIn ether, but getting right to the inbox that Marisha checks every day. So another way to save that money and invest it more wisely by, say, donating to your favorite local library. I think that would be a much wiser use of those scarce resources.
We agree.
Okay, great questions. All right, so definitely time for plenty more questions as we go along. And Nora, definitely keep me honest on that Q&A. If things come in and I miss them, let me know.
We do have 2 questions in the Q&A box.
Okay, yeah, let's do this. Let's move on to the next section just to keep things rolling a little bit. I'm going to pause for a while after that because it's about profiles, and I know there'll be a ton of questions. Okay, so let me come back to another question for you all. And that is, let's imagine now that you are the recruiter at the Nature Conservancy, and you are going on LinkedIn to find amazing talent like Alice, and you've put in your keywords to find someone who's great in this space. When LinkedIn's algorithm has to make this tough decision about whose profile do I put at the top of that screen, that LinkedIn recruiter tool where I look for top talent, what do you think is the key driver of that decision? Is it A, your work experience, B, your recommendations, or C, your headline? So again, A, B, or C, let me know what you think is the key factor in the algorithm. Okay, so if you're in the room and you believe the answer is A, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, hands down, please. If you're in the room and you think the answer is B, recommendations, please raise your hand now. Okay. And then finally, if you think the answer is C, headline, that little piece of text below your name, please raise your hand at this point.
Okay, Jeremy, so we're split in the room between B and C.
Aha. And I'm seeing a similar split online. So Brian and Clifford and Gary and Lynn are saying C, whereas Lynn and Deb are saying A, Jamie's saying C. So slightly more C's. And in this case, again, the C's have it. And to prove it to you, to really give you sort of the source of truth here, let's come back to that LinkedIn recruiter tool where all the magic happens. And so in this case, our hypothetical recruiter says, I need to find a project manager. We've got too much to do. It's too disorganized. Someone's got to bring order to this chaos. And so they put that little prayer into LinkedIn, and lo and behold, an interesting pattern emerges, which is every single one of these winners of the LinkedIn lottery, because again, they're going to get reached out to by this recruiter with a potential opportunity to interview. has that exact keyword, project manager, right there in their headline. Emily's got it, Channing's got it, Aubrey's got it, and they've all got it in spades. And so that is the first key insight, which is the algorithm is all about keywords and specifically keywords in certain sections. And to expand on this, I would love to give a free profile makeover to one lucky recipient today. So all you've got to do is raise your hand if you're online or raise your hand if you're in the room. And I would be happy to set you up with everything you need to make sure that your profile stands out. Let's go over to the room this time. Janie, are there any volunteers in person? Is that a yes in the room, Janie, or? Oh, sorry.
I was muted. Sorry, I was muted. Yes, Alan would.
Oh, Alan, great. Welcome back, Alan. And thanks to everyone online for raising your hand. I will definitely have lots more volunteer opportunities coming up.
So should I have Alan come up to the front?
Yeah, I know it's kind of like a game show. Come on down, Alan. You're the next
Okay, so
winner.
you're gonna want to put the J
Profile's
Herman
right.
account. You want to turn on, Alan's gonna come up here. I think you're the one that has to put my video on.
Yeah, and I'm seeing your video. It's coming through.
Oh, okay.
Hey there, Alan.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hey, so Alan, before we even look at your profile, let's start with the big question. You know, obviously there's no such thing as a generically good LinkedIn profile. There's just a profile that's really well optimized for a certain search. So what is the search that you want to be found for?
Career coach.
Ooh, I love it. Okay, so you want to be found by career coach. Are you thinking about like university-based hiring or outplacement agencies, any kind of particular industry?
Outplacement.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, so now, before we even look at your profile, let's test out this first sort of hypothesis, if you will, that the headline is critical. So imagine that I'm a recruiter, and I could be at an outplacement agency, or I could be at any university looking for someone for my team. And I type in career coach. And by the way, everyone can try this on their side. And look at these results here, Alan. Between Lisa, Leva, Teresa, what do they all have in common?
We all say career coach
And where does it say it?
right in the headline.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of times I think as job seekers, we can psych ourselves out because we think, oh my goodness, like there's this really complicated algorithm and it's out to get me. Nah, LinkedIn's not that fancy. It's pure pattern matching and specifically pattern matching in the most important sections. And by the way, the reason the headline matters so much is that it is the shortest piece of text on your entire profile. So it's the hardest to game and it's the most authentic signal of who you are and what you can do. So that's why it gets more weight. Okay, are you ready, Alan, for me to pull up your profile and give it not some criticism, but a lot of love?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Alan. Can everyone in the room and everyone online give Alan a huge round of applause for being so brave? That takes guts. Okay, and Alan, keep me honest here. I believe looking at your name tag, this is you right here. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, wonderful. LinkedIn never fails. My trusty steed. So we've got Alan's profile. And so, you know, given what we just talked about, I think Alan is in great shape. You know, you can tell in his headline, he is already focused, not just on calling myself, okay, I am a director of blah, 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 but he is putting in the exact keywords people are going to search for. If you want a career coach, you're going to search for career coach. If you want someone to help with salary negotiation, you're going to put in salary negotiation. And that's going to help Alan be found by all those searchers because he has it not just on his profile, but specifically on the most important section of his profile. So Alan, you are off to a great start. But now let's come back to our source of truth, which is, yes, the job title is the first critical keyword, but the skills are your secondary sets of keywords because that's where recruiters test out, can you walk the talk? Are you actually good at the things we need you to be good at? So do you happen to know, Alan, what the top 20 most important skills are to be an awesome career coach?
No.
Yeah, and to be honest, me neither. I have no idea. But what if I told you, Alan, that there is somewhere on LinkedIn that recruiters are literally handing you this list of skills? Where would that might possibly be?
In other people's profiles.
So absolutely, you come back here and say, you know, Lisa's winning this lottery, Leva's winning, Teresa's winning. Maybe I'll reverse engineer their profiles and grab some of those keywords. So that's great. But I like to go right to the source of truth. So I don't want any middlemen. If I want to hear directly from the recruiters themselves, this is what I want in my top candidates. where are they listing those qualifications?
In your about section?
Yeah, in the about section specifically of their job descriptions. So check this out. It's funny, as career coaches, sometimes we obsess over job descriptions because they're long and they're wordy and they're sort of hard to parse. But hiding inside these job descriptions, like this one for career coach, are the actual skills that we expect. And so if you look over here, things like you must be focused on in-demand jobs, you must be focused on wraparound supports, cohort-based experiences. It sounds like a bunch of alphabet soup, but these are the skills that they want to see on your profile. And so how would you like this, Alan? How would you like to have a customized list of your keywords just for these kinds of jobs?
That'd be great.
Okay, so check this out. There is another site that's also free to use, at least for a couple searches a month, called jobscan.co. And what JobScan will do for you is basically simulate the LinkedIn algorithm ahead of time. So even before you touch your profile, you know what to focus on. And so just like the LinkedIn algorithm itself, we're going to feed it 2 bodies of text. First of all, we're giving all of Alan's existing profile, which already has great keywords. And then we're comparing that side by side with the entire job description straight from the horse's mouth. And we're going to test whether Alan is nailing these keywords or if he has a little room for improvement. So Alan, with your permission, I would love to do a little bit of a drum roll in the room. Dun, 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 dun.
Let's go.
That's right. A lot of people are rooting for you. You brought your rooting section tonight. I love that. And here is the moment of truth, Alan's match rate. Now, when you see a match rate, you might say, oh my goodness, I'm lower than I wanted to be. But for me, this is actually a sign of opportunity. This is a chance for me to nail the things that I want to be discovered for. So what this is telling me is that here are the things that are listed on the job description: higher education, coaching, interviewing, mentoring. And then here's how often they appear on Alan's profile. And of course, he's nailing stuff like coaching and interviewing. But the question is, Alan, have you ever done any mentoring? Have you ever done anything with training?
Yes.
I had a feeling. Tell me about a time that you served as a mentor. Just give me like one quick anecdote.
I was working in the corporate world and there was a new employee that came in, and I wrote up some training documentation and helped him learn the job. And I worked as a mentor for him.
Yeah, I love that. I can just imagine the bullet point kind of writing itself, like, led mentorship for new employees, drove retention 50% higher based on careful training and support for our newest team members. And just with a simple bullet like that, you are naturally incorporating that really important keyword where the algorithm sees it, the recruiter sees it, and you get credit for that hard work that you put in. And so really, again, LinkedIn is not rocket science. Profiles don't have to be the bane of your existence. If you can just figure out what are the most important things that I have to win for, both from the job title and from the skills, and then incorporate them all throughout my profile, in the experience section, in the about section, in the skills section down below, you're going to be off to a great start. So Alan, any questions about the profile or how to do this sort of algorithmic comparison?
Makes sense to me.
Awesome. Well, I've got to tell you, you already have an amazing profile. So I feel like I have some ringers on the line today because you have definitely set the bar very high. But just in case you ever do want that career coach role, I'm going to share this list of keywords with you as a little bit of career coaching homework to give you something to noodle on. And that'll be the parting gift for this career game show. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Thank you so much, Alan. Everyone, another round of applause, please. Alan was fantastic. And again, even if you didn't get a chance to do this live, just know that you can absolutely repeat that same process. Find the jobs you're excited about, go to jobscan.co and run your own comparison. And just running it one time for free, you'll automatically know this is what matters most. Okay.
I have to say, this is Janie. I have to say, I'm really impressed with Alan and how he has the customized banner up there. Right away when you get there. I think it makes me realize I have to go back and do something with mine. Yeah.
Yeah. And to be honest, we've only scratched the surface here. Like keywords are the place you want to start because they have the most scalable impact. But also think about the human recruiter. The fact that as humans, we are really swayed by images more than text. The fact that Alan has this nice welcoming smile, this clear statement of what he's focused on, all that's going to be just as compelling for me when I land on that profile as for the algorithm reading the keywords. So Alan knocked it out of the park. Okay, I know we've got a ton of questions queued up. So why don't we start with this? I'm going to share Alan's URL, if you don't mind, Alan, because folks would love to connect with you. Nora, do you want to start with some of the questions you saw in the Q&A? And then for folks online, if you want to ask your question in the chat or raise your hand in the room, that's great as well. Over to you, Nora.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to pull some questions from the beginning chat that we had as well.
Yeah.
So one of the questions was related to this profile and recruiters finding you. Lucius had asked, does being out of work impact the algorithms that draw recruiters to your profile?
Yeah, such a good question, Lucius. And I totally get it because, the last 2 years have been completely disruptive, if nothing else, to our careers. That being said, I want to give you 2 points of information that can be really useful. To answer your question most directly, no, you are not penalized by the algorithm for saying, hey, I'm looking for a job. In fact, LinkedIn actually has shared data that turning on the open to work signal that we'll talk about in a moment actually makes you twice as likely to be hired in the next 30 days. So there is no algorithmic penalty for putting yourself out there. That being said, the recruiters in the crowd may tell you that there is this little bias, and it's very human in nature. People say, oh, I might prefer someone who's currently employed versus someone who's unemployed because that changes my perception of them as a candidate. So I think the way that I would sort of finesse that is I would make it clear that you're looking because you want folks to know that they can help you and they can support you. But I wouldn't come across as desperate. I wouldn't say, unemployed, needed jobs soon in my headline, because that might cast a negative pall for the human recruiter. The second thing to know is LinkedIn knows people leave the workforce for all sorts of reasons, to take care of their kids, to take care of their elderly relatives, for family emergencies. And so you can now actually list in your LinkedIn work experience, basically a work absence where you say, I was a stay-at-home parent. I was taking care of my sick parent at home. And LinkedIn, again, will not penalize you for that. Instead, it will help explain that gap to recruiters. Awesome question, Lucius. What else, Nora?
So there was also a question about the open to work banner, but I think you said you're going to.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in a moment.
Okay, so we'll leave that behind. We had a question on the sort of the back end of LinkedIn. Is it worth switching to creator mode? Does being help attract job opportunities?
Yeah, so if you come to your profile on LinkedIn, so you go to me and then view profile, and again, feel free to follow along on your own screens. What you will see is that you have the ability on your LinkedIn profile to turn on or off this thing called creator mode right here under resources. And creator mode is great if you are using LinkedIn in a more entrepreneurial way. So maybe you have your own small business and you want to build clientele and you want to build followers, or maybe you work for a company, but you want to become a thought leader or an influencer in that space. It basically highlights the fact that you're sharing content, talking about certain topics. It gives you the ability to send out newsletters to your followers. But the big trade-off in my mind is that it changes your default button on your page from connect to follow. And again, following is great if you just want to have tons of people following you. But if you want to be making more intimate connections with hiring managers, with recruiters, with people in your industry, you may not want to go down that road because becoming an influencer may not be an important goal for you. Instead, getting that job or that next job might be more important, in which case I would probably leave creator mode off. Great question.
Okay, and Jeremy, we have some questions coming from the room here.
Yeah, let's do it.
So this is in relation, when you were talking about adding in if you went on a leave to take care of a child or whatever, but what if you do not have a current position to post that about? So you've been laid off, will you be penalized for that? Like with the algorithm, like if you are unemployed for a year, how do you explain that if there's just no reason other than the economy?
Yeah, so totally. And so the algorithm never penalizes you just for the fact that you haven't had a job or that your job title is a different job title. That being said, you are missing potential upside with the algorithm. And so what I might suggest is think really deeply about what you've been doing the past year. Have you been volunteering? Have you been freelancing? Have you been contracting? Because if you've been doing any of those things, and especially if they're related to the job that you want next, you should take credit for that. And so you could list your own small business, you could list your research project or your volunteer efforts, And you could say, hey, I've been doing project management for this NGO, or I've been doing market research for this small business here in Princeton. And guess what? Those are the keywords that recruiters want to find you for vis-a-vis your last section. So if you can make any connection whatsoever, definitely get credit for that work you've done.
Yeah, and we have a lot of the folks in this room are very good at volunteering. Here comes David. He's one of them.
Welcome, David.
Hi, Jeremy. I was the one who just asked that follow-up question with the algorithm. And what I was curious, if there's no current position, the most recent one has an end date, then you don't have a 100% complete profile. So does that affect the algorithm?
Yeah, so this is a sneaky thing. And when I worked at LinkedIn, we had come up with that meter as kind of this, behavioral psychology approach where people love completeness. Just like you were alluding to there, David, everyone wants to be 100% in everything. But here's the reality. As much as that might seem like correlated with, LinkedIn success, it's actually completely disconnected. We're just trying to get you to put more information in the system because that makes the network more valuable. That makes you more valuable as a profile to be recruited or sold to or marketed to. However, if you want to strip away all of that marketing stuff to what actually matters, it really does come back to keywords and that human factor. If you have the right keywords on your profile, the algorithm can find you. If you have the right human factors, like we were talking about in Alan's case with a great photo, a great cover photo, then a recruiter will pick you. And if you can focus on those two things to the exclusion of everything else, you're going to be golden. Great question, David.
Okay, and the other question we had is about keywords. We know they're critical. Is there an optimal number to use for keywords throughout the profile? In other words, can you overdo it? Do you feel there's a critical optimal number?
Yeah, such an interesting question, because when you get to LinkedIn for the first time after being in the resume world for years and years, it can feel so freeing. You're no longer trapped on this 8.5 by 11-inch piece of paper. You now have the entire web to work with. So you might want to go crazy and list hundreds and thousands of keywords. That being said, always remember there are two audiences. So for the algorithm, there's no such thing as too many keywords. This is a entirely silicon-based process that can devour billions of profiles a day. So no problem there. But for the human recruiter who has human limitations, if you list 1,000 things on your profile, I start to wonder, are you organized? Are you concise? Are you a good communicator? And so I would say, try to find the 10 or 20 keywords that you're seeing over and over again across job descriptions and really double down on those. And so, for example, in my own about section, I have about 10 keywords that are really critical to the jobs I want. And I list them there and I list them into my experience section, but I also don't overdo it because I want people to know that if I'm going to be marketing your brand, I'm going to market it in a responsible way, the same way I've marketed my own candidacy. Great question. Okay. Any other questions in the room or online, Nora?
We do have some more online. On the topic of having the gap in your profile,
Yeah.
One of our online attendees asked, if I haven't worked for a significant period of time, a year, should I keep my former title as is? Note that I did change the from to end date.
Got it. Yeah. So basically, the way to think about former jobs and former positioning on LinkedIn is don't be sort of stuck in the past. Always be focused on what do I want to do next? So let's say, for instance, that you were a project manager and then you went on a parental leave and now you want to come back to being a project manager. Well, it would be crazy to take away any of that good project manager verbiage from past jobs and past bullets, because that's the stuff that's going to get you found for your next job. However, if you've been a project manager in the past and now you want to be a marketer, well, only having project management verbiage on your profile is going to get you typecast, where recruiters will come to you, but they're only going to be asking you to do the job that you used to do. And so you've got to signal in your headline and your about section, yeah, I'm really organized. I'm a great project manager, but imagine the kind of organization and the leadership I could bring to your marketing campaigns. And you've got to pitch that vision of what you can do in the next job, not just what you've done before. So don't be stuck in the past. Always think about the next role just as much. Anything else, Nora?
We do have some additional questions if we're still going.
Yeah, why not?
So we have a couple questions about using LinkedIn. Gary had a couple of questions. I'm going to combine them. So Gary recently landed a new role. Congratulations, Gary. That's
Gary.
And his learning goals for today are more around like networking, posting, and business development expertise. And part of his question was, how does one better manage the feed that you're receiving on LinkedIn?
Yeah, great question. So we'll talk a lot about networking in our last section. I will just say for now that the feed is really nice on LinkedIn because there are all sorts of ways to sort of massage it to the things that you're really excited about. So for example, if you see stuff in your feed and you're not happy about it, you're like, I don't want to hear from this person or I don't want to hear from this topic, you can absolutely unfollow, remove connection, basically say, I don't want to see these kinds of posts anymore. So a lot of control over that. In terms of what you do want to see, you can say, hey, here are the hashtags I want to follow. So let's say that Gary has moved into, I don't know, the fintech space. That's really hot right now. Well, if you search the fintech hashtag and you click follow, LinkedIn will follow your lead and say, okay, Gary's into fintech. Let's make sure that he's getting lots and lots of that content right there where he's looking every day. So that's how you teach LinkedIn what you care about. Awesome question, Gary. Maybe take one more, Nora, and then we'll move on to our third section.
Alice had asked, how much is too much posting?
Yeah, sure. So I will come back to the source of truth here, which is you'll notice on this page, the LinkedIn Recruiter tool, there is actually no filter for recruiters to say, hey, I need someone who posts 100 times a day on LinkedIn or never post on LinkedIn. And the reason for that is that recruiters, just don't care. They're not really focused on your LinkedIn posting frequency so much as what can you do for them? How can you actually do this job? So in general, posting is not that important for the specific focus of luring in recruiters. That being said, you can play a slightly longer game, which is I want to make sure that people in my field are hearing about me, even if they're not looking to hire today. And so what I might recommend for Alice and others is it's not about quantity. It's not about posting a million times a day. It's about the quality and reach of those posts. And specifically, am I reaching the right people? And so if I'm going to post something here, the first rule of thumb is it's got to be of value. I don't want to just post like on Twitter, here's what I had for lunch, or here's what I'm doing this weekend. Instead, I'm going to be talking about topics in my space, topics in my industry. And then if I want to make sure it reaches all the right people, I'm going to tag everyone I respect in that space. So for example, if I'm talking about the future of high tech and Google, I'm going to tag my friends who work there. If I'm talking about what's happening in the cryptocurrency space, I'm going to hashtag that. And that way I make sure the right people are seeing it, they're sharing it with their trusted networks. And just like the ripples in a pond, my message is getting out there way beyond my original sort of stone toss. And so I think that's the kind of focus I would do where 1 or 2 posts a week that are really well targeted are way better than 100 posts that no one sees. Awesome questions. Okay, so now question for you all. Let's come back to that poor recruiter behind the scenes of the Nature Conservancy. And remember, they have seemed to have a lot of power in this process. They have this fancy tool called LinkedIn Recruiter. They can scour 800 million professionals around the world. They can zoom in on the exact right candidates. And yet they are limited by the gravity of LinkedIn, which is that even for that expensive price, recruiters only have a measly number of emails to send a month, sometimes about 30. And so if I only have 30 emails to send and I have tons of jobs to fill, that means that every single email I send has to be really, really smartly targeted. Is the person going to be a great candidate? And most importantly, are they going to respond? Because if I waste even one of those emails on a candidate who doesn't bother to respond, then I'm in big trouble. So my question for you is, if I'm down to only one email for the rest of the month, who gets that final message? Is it A, someone who's actively looking for a new job? B, someone who knows someone at my organization? Or C, someone who's following me, following the Nature Conservancy on LinkedIn? So again, give me your best guess online and in the room. And in the room, if you think the answer is A, please raise your hand. Great.
Nobody in the room.
Okay. If you think the answer is B, please raise your hand now.
Huh. Again, nobody.
Okay. And if you think the answer is C, please raise your hand.
It's unanimous.
Okay.
Oh, no. One who's not sure of anything.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that's totally fine. I know these questions are a little out of left field, but I will say, for the record, it's divided between A and C online. So Jamie and Lucius are saying A, Deb and Brian and Lynn are saying C, And I'm happy to say in this case,
I'm weighing in B, by the
you're
way.
gonna go with B. Okay, I'm glad you said that, Janie, because you are all correct. And again, to prove it to you, let's go back to our source of truth, LinkedIn Recruiter. So here is the plight of the LinkedIn Recruiter in one single number. Even with all of my filters applied, I still have 43,000 candidates, way too many to send emails to all individually. So to make sure that these candidates are truly in-mail worthy, check out these 3 additional filters that I can apply thanks to LinkedIn. And to demonstrate how these work, I would love for someone to either chat in the name of a job and a company that you would like. So for example, I would love to be a product manager at LinkedIn. I would love to be a brand manager at American Express. Or if you're in the room, just raise your hand. And by the way, you don't have to volunteer. I'm not going to put you on the spot for this one, but I'm going to give you an example of how I would apply these hacks in your situation.
Okay. Let's see.
And no right answer here. This is just to sort of bring it to life in a more colorful way. Anyone in the room, Janie?
No, anybody have one? Well, here, let's make it library related. We can do, see if there's a library director.
Ah, yeah, why don't we do that? What if we say you're library director at Princeton Library?
No, we have, we're
Okay.
too small. Do library, do reference librarian at New York Public Library.
Oh, I love that. Okay, very cool. You want to
Yeah.
guard the lions, or you want the lions to guard you.
Reference
So-
librarian at New York Public Library.
This is what we're going to do. Put yourself in the shoes of a recruiter, basically in the HR department for NYPL. And so the first question is going to be, hey, is this person even really interested in a new job? Because the worst thing that could happen to me is I find a great candidate, but they are so happy in their current role, they don't even bother to respond to me. And that's one more email down the drain. So what I highly encourage everyone to do, you can do this right now in real time because it's super fast, is go to your profile, again at the top of the screen, click view profile, and then come over to this section right there at the top called Open to Work. And what Open to Work is nothing short of a bat signal to the world of recruiters saying, hey, you want a research librarian? Guess what? I'm the best in the world. Come and get me. And that simple act of putting yourself out there with a specific job title, the places you want to be found for work, your timeline, the kind of jobs, that is so powerful because it takes you from being filtered out right here to filtered in. So please, 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 if you are at all are interested in a new job anytime in the near future, turn this signal on. And by the way, if you're currently employed, I know what you're thinking. You're like, Jeremy, I would love to do that, but I also don't want to get fired by my current boss. How do I thread that needle? Well, it turns out that in addition to sharing with everyone on LinkedIn, you can also choose to only share it with recruiters. And again, they have to pay $10,000 just to access this tool. And then specifically recruiters who don't work at your current company, so you don't have to worry about the HR department ratting you out to your boss. So,
How many people knew that? Yeah, this is all new information for us. Thank you.
okay, good. And again, like, how long did that take, Janie? Was that like 10 hours of work?
Right.
No way. It's,
No.
5 seconds here, 5 seconds there. And then you basically have a lifetime of opportunity. All the doors this is opening for just a few seconds of work. So turn that signal on. Even if it's a private signal, make sure it's getting to the right people. So that's number one. Number two is all about company connections. Let me ask you this question, Janie.
Mhm.
If you were a recruiter at NYPL, would you rather talk to a candidate who knows 5 people at your organization or someone who knows nobody?
Library world is pretty small, so I would like them to know some people at NYPL.
Yeah,
Yes,
and why? Why does it matter?
it shows probably that they're connected to library causes, that they're in the area maybe, they've met at conferences, they're active.
Yeah, so many reasons, right? So much connectivity is critical to us as human beings. We want to see those relationships. And so the question becomes, okay, if the company wants me to have a connection at the firm or the organization, how do I make sure I have lots of connections? Well, what you can do is you can certainly come over here to the My Network tab, and you can connect with people one at a time, and that's great. That's certainly a good way to begin. But I have a feeling, Janie, that you as a savvy librarian are about efficiency. You don't want to waste time on things that could be done much faster.
Exactly.
So for you and for your lucky listeners today, I'm going to share another hack with you, which is you come over here to this My Network tab. And again, the link is in the chat. And then you come over to Add Personal Contacts. what you can do is you can upload your address books. So every time that Janie corresponds with someone on her Gmail or her Princeton email address, that person is automatically added to her address book. So other librarians, other library directors, people in this industry are going to be in that address book. And even if you haven't connected with them on LinkedIn already, Janie, just feeding that into LinkedIn automatically gets you credit. It closes the gap in that connection and then gives you a chance to go from 10 connections to 100 connections to 1,000 connections, not one by one by one, but overnight, giving you credit for the people you already know. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay, so again, all about efficiency, get in the game as fast as you can, and most importantly, be filtered in versus filtered out. And
Hey,
then final
Jeremy.
little question for you, Janie. If you are at NYPL, would you rather reach out to someone who's following your organization on LinkedIn or someone who couldn't care less?
Definitely somebody who's following.
Yeah, it just shows a sign of interest, right?
Yes, exactly.
Another little data point for me to leverage. And so again, it's not rocket science, it's not a ton of work, but if you look up any organization in the world, including the Princeton Library and the NYPL, what you will discover is that sure enough, they have a LinkedIn page. And by clicking this one little follow button, you could change the course of your career, maybe even your life, because guess what? Now you're filtered in here versus being filtered out. And so the reason I call these 3 high ROI or return on investment hacks is the numerator is massive, like all the upside of getting your dream job, but the denominator, the investment, is so limited. A few seconds here, a couple minutes there, and you're off to the races. So thanks for helping me demonstrate that, Janie. You were awesome.
Okay.
Hey,
Great.
Jeremy,
Yeah,
we had a couple of follow-up questions about the open to work setting.
yeah,
If I can ask those now.
please do.
One of our attendees said, when you make that change to open to work, the command is then share. Does that mean that it's now visible or that there's some sort of active messaging that is sent out?
Yeah, great question. So I do believe the very first time that you turn that on, LinkedIn is always trying to drive more engagement and more content in its feed. And so it may give you an option to say, hey, do you want to share this with everyone in your network? And again, it all comes back to where are you in your career now? And what's the trade-off between privacy and connectivity? So if you are currently a free agent and you're unemployed and looking for an opportunity, I would say it's crazy not to share widely. Many of you have heard of the sociological theory of the power of weak ties, which is that when sociologists investigate how do people find jobs, it's often not through our friends and our family, our closest connections, because they know all the same stuff that we know. Instead, it's through our weak ties, people we worked with 3 jobs ago, people we went to school with 20 years ago, because they're the ones who are plugged into different networks. They're the ones who can expose us to new opportunity. So if you can, definitely share with everyone. That being said, if you have a current job and you have to keep it on the down low, I certainly understand that and totally fine to just keep it limited to that certain subset of people as well. Great question.
And then Deb had asked, when Deb has used this open to work, there's a banner that shows up on the profile every time. Is that always going to be open, or is there a way to turn that off? Do you know?
Yeah, so I believe what he's referring to is this little piece that's added to your profile photo. And it says hashtag open to work. And so again, that is only if you choose to share with everyone. But if you don't want that little banner on there and you want to keep it on the down low, just choose this option and it will not appear on your profile. Okay. Any questions in the room, Janie?
Any questions? Well, I think we're good.
Okay. So here we go.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Time out. Yep.
Could you explain how Jeremy has the background? Did that teach there?
Okay, so he wants, so we have someone that was wondering about getting the banner where you said teach, and I guess Alan also had that. So that's, what's that section called?
Yeah, so this is called your cover photo. And you might have seen something similar on Twitter or Facebook. Kind of it sits behind your headshot. And if you just click on the little pencil icon, you have the chance to update that. That being said, let me show you another really cool hack. So as we were talking about, we as humans are very visual creatures. We want something that's going to catch our eye and really hammer home your brand. So if you want to have something beautiful, but also not spend big bucks getting it, go to a site called pexels.com. And the reason I love Pexels is they have this gorgeous photography that is all completely royalty free. So for example, let's say you want to be a project manager. And so you're going to spend all your day on a whiteboard, basically organizing your Gantt chart, organizing your flows. You could grab an awesome background photo like that, plug it in right behind your photo, and then bam, every time a recruiter lands on your profile, they're going to say, aha, here is someone who gets it right off the bat. It's a powerful visual signal, and it's free at Pexels or unsplash.com. Great call out. Okay, I know we're getting a little late in the evening, and I want to get you home in time for a late dinner or a little dessert. So let me close with one final pop quiz. So we've been talking a lot about process, and I know that library goers, as an avid library goer myself, are some of the most curious people in the world. They want to know how the process works, how things happen. But at the end of the day, what we all want is results. We want the dream job, we want the open door, we want the chance to transform our career. So let's cut to the chase. There are three main ways that people apply for jobs in this country. They either apply through a company's website, they apply through a job board like LinkedIn, or they apply through a referral, someone advocating for them inside the organization. Of these three options, one gives you a 10x advantage over everyone else. Which one do you think it is? So if you're in the room and you think the answer is A, go ahead and raise your hand. Any A's, Janie?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, if you think the answer is B, please raise your hand.
Nope.
Nope. Okay, I see where this is headed. If you think the answer is C, please raise your hand.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
We're all
beautiful.
interested.
By the way, Jamie agrees, Lynn agrees, Lynn agrees, Deb agrees, Lucius agrees, Brian agrees, everyone agrees, and everyone is correct. And just to sort of back up your intuition here, check out this data. This is an infographic representing millions of job applications over several years through a site called JobVite, one of these large applicant tracking systems that collects online applications. And so the first thing you're going to look at here is this last column that says applications by source type. What this is telling you is that the vast majority of applicants, no surprise, are applying on career sites and job boards, the usual suspects. But the problem here is that when you look at who actually gets hired, those people are hired at a much lower rate. And yet this tiny top row of fewer than 10% of all applicants who are referred in is soaking up the vast plurality of all the jobs in this country. And what that should tell you as a savvy library goer is that there are two games in the hiring world. There's a game that's kind of like playing blackjack in Vegas, where the odds are stacked against you and the house always wins. And then there's a game that's much more like a slam dunk in basketball, where you are close to the rim, your shot percentage is much, much higher. That's the game you want to be playing. And so how do you do that? Well, I would like to demonstrate the actual steps to get a referral at any company in the world. And all I need is one final volunteer. So please help me close out this session style by raising your hand online or in the room.
Sorry, Jeremy, what was that site that you were using for the last chart? We missed it here in the room.
Oh yeah, it's JobVite. So I'll put that into the chat.
How do you spell
it is a site that is not something for us to use as job seekers, but companies buy it to basically handle the onslaught of online applications. Great question. Okay, I see that Jennifer is game here. So Jennifer, I'm going to give you a chance to chat. If you can, go ahead and turn on your microphone. And welcome, Jennifer.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Doing great. And thank you so much for being our final volunteer this evening. And so Jennifer, I want you to really throw down the gauntlet here. You know, sometimes people go easy on me and they say, oh, Jeremy, help me get a job at some, giant company that everyone already works at. But if you could work for any organization in the world, Jennifer, no matter how small, no matter how selective, what would that organization be?
Princeton University.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So Princeton obviously has this fancy pants reputation. I imagine it's pretty tough to land a job there in many, many cases. And so the question is, how do you better your odds? How do you give yourself the best possible chance about breaking in? And so referral, absolutely. But here's the thing. Everyone knows in their heart that referrals matter because they come back to relationships. They come back to what matters to us as humans. The problem is this data also makes clear that very few people know how to get referrals. Otherwise, this number would be a lot higher. So let me actually walk through how to do it. And what I would recommend first is just search for Princeton. You're going to come over here to the Princeton page. And what you're going to see on the Princeton page is, yes, it's that follow button that we were talking about before. but you're also going to see this little link that no one even really pays attention to, but that is so powerful because clicking on this link gives you the access to the complete Princeton employee directory, which I promise you is even more detailed, even more nuanced than the one that Princeton maintains on its internal servers. Because not even Princeton knows where everyone has worked, all their skills, all their background. And so all these 9,000 Princeton folks could be potential referrers for you. But again, just as we talked about with Janie, you don't want to waste time, Jennifer. You don't want to go after referrals that are hard to get. You want to start with low-hanging fruit. So who on LinkedIn, Jennifer, would be the easiest person to get a referral from?
First.
In other words, people you know already. And especially if you've imported your address books, chances are you'll know someone. So if I want Eva or Robert or Jane to give me a referral, guess what? It not only gives me much better odds about getting in, what do they get, Jennifer? What's in it for them?
Well, maybe a bonus if I get hired, or the chance to share, the experiences that they've had, their excitement, their passion.
Exactly. So it's everything from the intrinsic benefit of karma to the extrinsic benefit of the big bucks, as Alex called it in the chat, which is that, even at Khan Academy, where I work, which is a nonprofit, if I refer someone who gets hired, I get paid 2,500 smackaroos just for putting their name into the system. Not too bad for 30 seconds of work, right?
That's right.
So if you know people are ready, don't spend a second thinking about it, ask for the referral. But let's go to our next stage here. If you don't happen to know anyone already, Jennifer, what's your next best option?
Second.
And what does that mean, by the way? What is second degree on LinkedIn?
I know somebody who knows that person.
Exactly, a friend of a friend. And if you just think about how networks work, well, look at the exponential math here. Even sitting here in California, where I only know 5 folks at Princeton, I have almost 100 people that I know through someone else.
Right.
So let's say that I want to reach out to Andrea, for instance. She's my target contact. But again, she's a total stranger to me today. If I reach out to her directly, what is the chance that she responds to me, Jennifer?
Pretty high.
Okay. I like your optimism.
You'd have to say who you know in common, maybe.
Yes.
Close to the person that you know. Yeah.
So you could definitely name drop, and that certainly helps. But what if I wanted a slam dunk, like I was saying before? What if I want a 100% chance that Andrea takes my call?
Connection.
Exactly.
Go to the connection.
Say, Jeff, I happen to notice that you know Andrea, and Andrea could change the course of my life because she's right now hiring for my dream job. Could you possibly introduce us? Now, what's the chance that Andrea responds?
A little higher.
A lot higher, that's right. Because again, just human nature, right? We trust the people that we know a lot more than we trust strangers. And if you have someone who has that internal currency, it would be crazy not to take advantage of it. So that's the power of second degree. And then finally, are there any other affiliations, any other parts of your identity, Jennifer, that might plug you in to people who work at Princeton?
So Jennifer, we have someone here in the audience who runs our job seekers group, David Schuckman, who you might want to connect with because he knows the past HR director at Princeton University who might be able to give you some insights into the hiring process.
Bam, look at that. A real life second degree connection.
Dunk.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you, Dave.
David Schuckman. David, your last name is always so hard to spell. Hang on. So
I love that. And like, that's the thing is that at the end of the day, it's all about the fact that people want to help. People want to sort of see you succeed, but you've got to put yourself out there just like you were doing right now, Jennifer, which is going to enable you to open doors. So I love that. So last question is just, is there anything else that might bind you to someone at Princeton? Anything else you might have in common?
Let's see. Hang on. I've got the chat open on there. Other employee places we may have worked.
Yeah, for sure. So like
former employers in
UPenn
common
in a previous career, say, show me all the fellow Quakers who are now over at Princeton.
Yeah.
Of course, a huge amount of crossover. What about this? What if you said, I volunteer with Habitat for Humanity. That's a big volunteer passion of mine. Turns out there are 12 folks at Princeton who share that passion.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really good tip.
Cool. And then the bottom line question for you, Jennifer, and sorry to close on just one last thing is, once you've seen this data, once you've fully digested the implications of this chart, if you have a dream job or a dream employer, at what point, Jennifer, will you give up in your search for a referral?
I don't think I would.
Never.
Honestly,
Yes.
yeah, I really don't
Because
think I would.
I think this is the thing that took me a long time to grok about careers. Is so often as job seekers, we feel 100% disempowered. We send out these online applications into the void. We never hear back. We feel like someone else is controlling our destiny. And while it is true that we can't win every job, we have so many more levers than we realize to direct our path, to drive our destiny. And so I would never want to lose that power. And I would always want to give myself the very best shot at a potential opportunity that could change the course of my life. So thank you for demonstrating that so beautifully, Jennifer.
Well, thank you. And thank you, David. I will say too, when I graduated from university, of course, we weren't using the internet like we do now, but I was looking for a job in a country outside the US where unemployment was 14% and where I did not have a work permit. It was in Europe. And I was competing against other Anglophones, which is all of the UK, because this was after the European Union was established. So networking, without LinkedIn, without the internet, networking is it. I mean, the referrals is it. It is the only way I ended up getting a full-time job as a 22-year-old in Paris, where unemployment was 14%. Networking is the name of the game. So LinkedIn is a tool that can just take that up to a whole other notch. This was really helpful. Thank you.
Wow, I love that story. And I think that's so powerful because, I think for me, especially as an introvert, I always sort of trembled at the idea of networking. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to go to a mixer and have business cards printed out and press the flesh. It just made my skin crawl. But then I realized, networking doesn't have to be so sort of pushy.
No,
it can just be relational, and especially on LinkedIn, you can find, the exact right people and just reach out.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Who do you know that you might know? It's making connections more than being pushy. Totally. Thank you again.
Thank you, Jennifer. You really did help us close it out really nicely. And before we close things out completely, I want to do a couple of things. So first of all, think of any final questions. And again, no question is too big or too small. So if you're curious about, what should I be doing with LinkedIn endorsements, or how do I do salary negotiations or prep for interviews on LinkedIn? All of that is fair game. You can start putting that in the chat if you're online, or just get ready to raise your hand if you're in the room. And then while you prep those questions, I want to leave you with a quick recap of what we've covered, as well as some bonus goodies for coming out tonight. So first of all, LinkedIn is powerful, but just like any social network or any internet tool, it has this dark side, which is we can go there, we can spend 5 hours going down the rabbit hole and have nothing to show for it. So avoid that fate by staying really focused on the few things that matter. Number one, know where you belong. Have a clear North Star that's informed not just by blog posts, but by talking to insiders, people from your alma mater. Number two, once you know where you want to be, don't keep it locked away in your head. Get it onto your profile where it can be seen by millions of recruiters in the form of keywords. Your job title and your headline, all of your skills down below. And then think of the poor recruiter on the other side of the screen. Just a few measly emails, tons of candidates to search through. How do you make yourself the easy, obvious candidate? Well, it's all about showing engagement. I'm open to work. I'm plugged into your company. I'm following you online. And then finally, if you ignore everything else, do yourself the big favor of getting that biggest advantage in the entire job search process, which is someone on the inside going to bat for you. Nothing else matters as much.